Welcome to HFY Strikes. Now buckle up and listen to our HFY Sci-Fi story. The stars looked different from Nebulon 5. They shimmered through the enormous curved viewing window, like cold diamonds scattered across a canvas of cosmic dust. Among them, the swirling violet and indigo cloud that gave the station its name pulsed faintly as if alive, like a beast breathing in the void. Ambassador Elena Torres stood motionless, arms crossed behind her back. Even after 3 years stationed here, that nebula still struck her breathless. It was beautiful, yes, but also lonely. Out here at the fringe of Commonwealth territory, nothing came easy. Not trust, not diplomacy, not survival. At 36, Elena was the youngest human ever assigned to a Tier 1 diplomatic post. Not because she was the best, because she was the only one willing to take it. Humanity was still the new kid in the galactic block. Still those deathworlders spoken about in hushed voices or avoided entirely. Most of the older races didn't know what to make of humans, too passionate, too impulsive, too willing to run toward danger when others ran from it. That unease followed Elena like a shadow. A wet gurgle broke her thoughts. Ambassador of the floral delegation has arrived in meeting room 3, came the bubbling voice behind her. She turned to see Trill, your Aquarian assistant, floating gently in his water-filled exosuit. The 6 tentacles drifting beside him twitched with nervous energy, his translucent blue skin gleaming under the overhead lights. Did they bring more gifts? Elena asked. Yes, Trill blinked his large eyes, singing plants. Again. Elena smiled despite herself. The florals were a tree-like species who communicated through color and scent as much as sound. Their singing plants were famous throughout the Commonwealth, musical vines that emitted haunting melodies when touched. Last time one of them had released pollen that made half the station sneeze for a week. Security cleared them, she asked. Trill nodded, no toxins this time. Elena brushed imaginary dust from her crisp uniform, took one last look at the nebula, then turned. Let's go charm the garden club. As she walked through the smooth arched corridors of the station, aliens from a dozen species moved aside to let her pass. Some offered polite nods, others stared with unreadable expressions. A few turned their backs. That was fine, she didn't need their approval, she just needed time. The diplomatic outpost wasn't large by galactic standards, but it was vital. Nebulon 5 sat near the neutral border between the Commonwealth and the Voidist Alliance, 2 rival blocks with different ideals and a lot of history. Where the Commonwealth sought cooperation, the Voidists took what they wanted. Their expansion had become more aggressive lately. Border patrols clashed. Trade routes were disrupted. Whispers of war grew louder. And stuck between it all was Elena. Ambassador Torres came a smooth voice ahead. Elena stopped. A tall, thin alien with silvery gray skin and no visible mouth stepped into her path. Director Lom, the station administrator, his kind, the Telic, prided themselves on their logic and neutrality traits they expected from everyone under their command. The Voidist ambassador has requested another emergency session regarding border disputes, Lom said. Elena's jaw tightened. Schedule it for tomorrow. I've already delayed the florals twice. Lom blinked all 4 of his eyes slowly. The Alliance grows impatient. So do I. With a curt nod, Lom moved on. Trill made a nervous clicking noise behind her. You know he will file another report. Let him. Elena's voice was flat. I don't work for Lom. I represent Earth. They reached the meeting room and the door slid open with a gentle hiss. Inside, the floral delegation rose gracefully from their rooted positions. They resembled tall, bark-covered humanoids crowned with vibrant blossoms. When they spoke, the flowers at their faces shifted colors and melodic tones filled the air like wind chimes in a dream. Elena bowed politely. Honored friends, I thank you for your patience. The floral leader pedal speaker Rinith responded in harmonized notes that Trill translated with precision. As the meeting began, Elena focused doing what she did best, building fragile bridges in a galaxy full of suspicion. Then everything changed. The door hissed open mid-sentence and Trill burst in his suit, vibrating, tentacles flailing. He never interrupted. Ever. Elena, he said, forgetting protocol, you need to see this, now. Rhineth's petals turned gray in offense. Elena held up a hand in apology. Please forgive me, honored one. There is an urgent matter. Without another word, she followed Trill at a near run through the halls. Incoming quantum message, he said, from Starpoint Colony. That made Elena stop. Starpoint, that's in neutral space. Trill's skin paled to a milky blue. They're under attack by Voidus ships. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. Starpoint wasn't a Commonwealth colony. It was a breakaway settlement. Humans who had chosen to live beyond the reach of any government built their own dome cities, their own peace. No treaties, no protection, but still human. They reached the communications chamber. The screen flickered with static. A distorted human voice cut through the haze. Void Crest ships, thousands of civilians, shields failing. We didn't provoke. Elena's knuckles whitened on the console. How old is this? She demanded. Just arrived, Trill said. Barely came through the relay. Their tech's ancient. Elena didn't hesitate. Send word to Earth Command. But they're not under our... They're human, she snapped. That's all that matters. Outside the chamber window, the nebula still glowed serenely, but the storm had already begun. The message was falling apart. Elena leaned over the console, her eyes scanning the flickering screen as static sliced through the voice like broken glass. The image showed fragments of Starpoint Colony, a peaceful dome settlement with solar farms, community greenhouses, and distant silhouettes of people running. Fires bloomed in the background. Explosions lit up the night sky behind the shielding domes. Shields at 40%, 700 children. Civilians, no warning. Voidus ships, 15 confirmed. Trill's tentacles moved like blurs over the controls, amplifying and stabilizing the feed. Bubbles rushed through his suit as he worked faster than Elena had ever seen. Hold on, I can boost the signal. Hurry! A few seconds later, the screen snapped into clearer focus. A man appeared, his face bloodied, lab coat, torn eyes wild. This is Dr. Mason of Starpoint Colony. We are under attack by Voidus forces. They claim we violated their territory, but that's a lie. We've lived here for over 10 years. This is neutral space. Please, if anyone hears this, we need help. Our defenses weren't built for this. We have 3,000 people, mostly civilians. We'll be wiped out. The message repeated, then cut to technical telemetry shield percentages, power draw, oxygen levels. Trill spoke quietly. They won't last 3 hours. Elena's heart pounded. Her hands trembled, but not from fear, from fury. The Voidist Alliance had broken every rule of galactic law, attacking a human colony, without warning, without provocation, in a region Earth had helped designate as neutral space. And now Elena looked around the diplomatic outpost she served. The station, filled with bureaucrats and rule followers, would do nothing. The door hissed open behind her. Director Lom entered, calm as ever, his gray face unreadable. Ambassador Torres, he said, there are reports of a transmission. Is it true? Yes, Elena said without turning. Starpoint Colony is under attack. Lom stepped forward, folding his hands behind his back. Starpoint chose to reject Commonwealth protection. They are not our responsibility. They are still human. That doesn't change the law. If you act on this, the station could be seen as taking sides. That would compromise our neutrality. Children are dying, she snapped, rounding on him. And if this station is attacked in retaliation, thousands more will die. His voice was as cold as ice. Our position is clear. No interference. Then he left just like that. Trill stood beside her in silence, his skin shifting to a pale, anxious blue. Elena began to pace. Think, think, think. She wasn't military. She had no fleet, no soldiers, no weapons. Just words, protocols, and the one thing the bureaucrats feared the most: action. Then her eyes fell on the panel in the wall. The emergency quantum communicator. It was small, unassuming, hidden behind a security seal and a thin pane of glass, meant only for extreme emergencies threatening the station directly. Designed to bypass bureaucracy and connect instantly to Earth Defense Command. Elena walked toward it. Trill moved to block her. Elena, that's a violation of Tier 3 protocols. Only in the event of a direct threat to... She held up her hand. If we wait for permission, 3,000 people die. He didn't move. She smashed the glass with the emergency hammer. A soft alarm began to sound, not loud enough to alert the entire station, but it would bring security. She activated the console. A small screen lit up, waiting. Her voice was steady. This is Ambassador Elena Torres, authentication code, Echo 7 Delta 9 Tango. I am reporting an ongoing attack on a civilian human colony, Starpoint, by Voidest warships. They are unprotected. Estimated casualties 3,000 if no immediate action is taken. Transmitting coordinates now. She input the data. Her finger hovered over the send button. Elena, Trill's voice was soft. If you do this, your career. If I don't, I'll never look at myself in the mirror again. She pressed the button. The device blinked once, then went dark. The signal was gone, traveling faster than light, past wormhole beacons and quantum relays straight to Earth Defense Command. The corridor lights turned red. Security protocols activated. The unauthorized use had been detected. Heavy footsteps thundered down the hall. Hide the glass, Elena said. Get rid of the hammer. Trill moved quickly and silently. His water suit bubbled with tension, but he said nothing. Then the security arrived. Not Commonwealth guards, not station peacekeepers. Voidus soldiers. Their armor was black bone-like with 4 glowing eye ports and weapons designed for precision and fear. And behind them, towering skeletal, draped in authority, was Commander Draz, the Voidus representative to Nebulon 5. Elena Torres, he said, in a voice that sounded like grinding metal, you are under arrest. 2 soldiers stepped forward. Trill floated between them and Elena. She did nothing illegal. She received a distress call from her species. Silence, water breather. Draz didn't even look at him. Our instruments recorded a quantum pulse. Only military channels use such methods. You've compromised station neutrality. Elena didn't resist. She stood tall, even as their clawed hands took her arms. You don't intimidate me, Commander, she said. I don't need to. Draz's 4 eyes narrowed. Because soon your fleet will not arrive, and that colony will be nothing but ash. As they dragged her out, she glanced at Trill. His tentacles gave the faintest nod. He'd hidden the glass, cleared the logs, made sure the message went out clean. Now it was up to Earth. Elena was locked in a windowless room with a single chair and no clock. She sat silently, breathing evenly, refusing to let the fear show. She could still see them, the children behind the shielding dome, the smoke rising, the fire. Please, someone be listening. Thousands of light years away, a fleet began to stir, and the deathworlders were about to make their move. The 7th Fleet carved silent lines through the void near Jupiter, 20 billion tons of Earth's might moving in perfect deadly synchronization. On the command bridge of the defiant Admiral Marcus Wells stood like a statue. Battle exercises flashed across holographic displays, formations tightening and reforming as his captains pushed their crews harder with each simulated run. Wells liked precision. He liked control. He liked knowing that in the chaos of space warfare, his fleet was the scalpel, not the hammer. He didn't like interruptions. So when the quantum emergency alert lit up red across the command screen, he turned slowly. Report. Quantum transmission, sir, said his comms officer, her voice tighter than usual. Level 1 priority, authenticated by Ambassador Elena Torres, Nebulon 5. Wells raised an eyebrow. Diplomat. Yes, sir. Human. Play it. The bridge fell into a tense silence as Elena's voice filled the room, calm but urgent. The crew listened as she detailed the assault on Starpoint, the number of civilians, the children, the estimated survival window. Wells stepped toward the center holotable as the transmission ended. Coordinates confirmed. Starpoint colony. Edge of neutral space about 14 hours from current position at max velocity. And how far is the nearest official response fleet? Proxima Station, sir. 3 days out. Wells stared at the blinking marker on the star map. The colony's distress signal still echoed faintly across the board like a heartbeat fading in the dark. He didn't speak for 10 seconds. Then all ships, battle stations, plot jump to Starpoint colony, maximum burn. His second-in-command, Commander Pike, hesitated. Sir, that's a direct violation of interstellar law. Starpoint isn't under Commonwealth protection. Command hasn't issued authorization. I'm aware, Wells said, turning his cold gaze toward him. I'm not waiting for command while 3,000 civilians are being slaughtered. Pike nodded, subdued. Aye, sir. Alarms flared to life across the fleet. Crews scrambled into readiness. Weapon systems primed. Medical bays prepped for emergency intake. Jump drives charged like beasts ready to leap through the void. On the defiant, Wells stood at the front of the bridge like a war god reawakened. Time to jump, 4 minutes. He stared at the countdown, jaw locked. His fingers brushed the worn wedding band on his chain, one of the few personal items he allowed himself on duty. Sir, said a comms officer, incoming transmission from Earth Command. Priority 1, Fleet Admiral Harris. Routed to my private channel. He entered the small chamber beside the bridge. The screen activated. Fleet Admiral Janice Harris stared back at him, expression severe. Marcus, she said, what in hell do you think you're doing? Saving lives. You moved the 7th Fleet into hostile adjacent space without approval. That's insubordination at best, treason at worst. Then court-martial me later, he said. Starpoint will be ash before the ink dries. They're not under Commonwealth jurisdiction, you know that. I do. I also know they're human, and Earth doesn't ignore its own. Her lips pressed into a hard line. You're risking war with the Voidist Alliance. Wells didn't blink. They fired first. Janice paused. Something flickered behind her tired eyes. Pain, regret, fear. You're forcing my hand. I know. You're going anywhere. Already plotting jump. She exhaled. Then I didn't give the order. No, ma'am. But unofficially, Fleet 3 and Fleet 5 are mobilizing. They'll reach your coordinates in 20 hours. Wells felt something tighten in his chest. He gave the faintest nod. Thank you. Don't thank me. If this goes bad, none of us will have careers left. Maybe not a planet either. The screen went dark. Wells returned to the bridge. New update, said the nav officer. If we cut through the Cygnus corridor, we can save 2 hours. Commander Pike stiffened. The corridor's unstable. Hyperspace spikes. We could lose half the fleet. Wells stared at the glowing route on the map, a scar through twisted subspace. No sane admiral would take it. Good thing he'd never been accused of sanity. Set course through Cygnus. Sir, do it. All ships adjusting trajectory, came the reply. The stars stretched into blue-white streaks. One by one, the vessels of the 7th Fleet plunged into the abyss. Back on Nebulon 5, Elena Torres sat alone in her detention room, time measured only by her breathing and the pulsing light in the ceiling. No food, no information, no allies. Until the door hissed open. Trill entered, dripping water across the floor, his body flushed a bright, relieved blue. Elena, he whispered. They questioned me. I said nothing. They have no proof about the quantum signal. Did it go through? He nodded. I checked the logs before the purge. The message reached Earth. Elena slumped slightly in the chair. Not from defeat, from release. Then there's still hope. Outside, the galaxy spun on. But far away, deathworlders were on the move. Faster than anyone expected. Willing to risk everything, not for power, but for people. And they were coming. The colony was dying. Inside the Starpoint main dome, 3,000 souls gathered in silence. The emergency lights cast everything in a sickly amber glow, flickering with each power fluctuation. Children huddled next to parents. Elderly colonists clutched data pads with last messages they hoped would somehow reach Earth. No one spoke of survival, only of time, how little of it remained. Dr. Mason stood at the front of the community hall, a data slate trembling in his hands. Shields at 12%, he said quietly. Estimated failure, 30 minutes. Someone sobbed. Another person cursed under their breath. A small girl in a worn jumper asked her father, "Why are the bad ships still shooting at us?" He didn't answer, just held her tighter. A grandmother stood up shakily. "Did anyone answer the distress signal?" Dr. Mason shook his head, no response. Truth was, he didn't expect one. Starpoint had always stood alone by choice, by principle. They had fled bureaucracy, refused to kneel to the Commonwealth or any alien empire. Now they were reaping the cost. But still, they were human, and humans hoped, even when it was madness. Above them, the stars flashed violently as voidest beams pounded the dome's weakening shields. On the bridge of the Dominance, General Krell's lipless mouth curled into satisfaction. Status. His tactical officer answered, "Shields on the colony will fail in under half an hour, General. Ground forces are ready for breach. Begin landing prep. I want control of that colony before nightfall." "Yes, sir." Krell's gaze lingered on the blue sphere of Starpoint below. Weak, defenseless, human. He was about to speak when a sensor alert shrieked across the bridge. "What now?" he growled. The sensor officer's voice cracked. Energy spike massive at the system's edge. It's a hyperspace rupture, sir." Krell's four eyes widened. "Show me." The screen blinked to a view of the outer rim. At first, there was only the black silence of space. Then reality tore open. A rift exploded into existence, hurling light and distorted gravity in all directions. From its center surged a fleet, sleek, dark, bristling with weaponry. Human ships, 15 of them. Krell stepped back. Impossible. The closest human military base was days away. He'd done the math, checked the maps. "Formations deploying," said the sensor officer, stunned. "Weapons armed. They're heading straight for us." In space, the 7th Fleet fanned out like a hunting pack, positioning themselves between Starpoint and the Voidus warships. At their center, the Defiant. On its bridge, Admiral Wells stood with hands behind his back, gaze locked on the tactical display. His voice was steel. "All ships in position." "Confirmed," Admiral Pike replied. "Voidus fleet still holding position. No fire yet. Looks like we caught them off guard." "Good. Open a channel." Seconds later, General Krell's four-eyed glare appeared on the main screen. "This is Admiral Marcus Wells of the Earth Commonwealth," Davy Wells said, voice even. "You are attacking a civilian colony. Withdraw immediately." Krell sneered. "This colony sits in Voidus claimed territory. Your presence is an act of war. Starpoint was legally settled in neutral space over 10 years ago. Your attack is the act of war. You are outnumbered, human. I have 23 ships to your 15. Wells gave a slow, cold smile. "Then you should double-check your history, General. We're from Earth. We've never cared much for odds." Back in the colony dome, people stared upward through the transparent panels. The shelling had stopped. Children gasped. Adults cried out. The sky above had changed. Metal giants now hovered between them and death. Dr. Mason felt his knees weaken. He whispered, "They came." Someone asked, "Who?" He smiled. "The Seventh Fleet. Earth came for us." Tension locked the void between fleets. Krell watched in silence, calculating. His warships could still destroy the colony before the humans could react. One command, one strike. He raised a clawed hand, then paused. Another hyperspace rupture split open behind the human fleet. Then another. 3 more Commonwealth fleets emerged from nothingness, forming a wall of firepower that outnumbered Krell's ships 2-1. On the defiant, Wells didn't flinch. "We're not alone, General," he said coolly. "This is what happens when you target innocent humans." "We respond." Krell growled. "You won't fire first. You won't risk the civilians." "You're right," Wells said. "That's why we came prepared." One of the human vessels broke formation, sleek, fast, black. "What is that?" Krell barked. His answer came when the ship darted toward a Voidus cruiser, then released a storm of metallic spheres that latched onto the hull. And everything died. The Voidus ship powered down in seconds, engines, cold weapons, dark. EMP Tech, Wells explained. Non-lethal, temporary, but very effective. 2 more human craft deployed, disabling ship after ship before Krell's fleet could adapt. Panic rose. "Fire on the colony," Krell shouted. 3 Voidist warships locked their cannons on the domes below. Wells turned. "Deploy shield pods." Tiny devices launched from human ships encircling the colony and linking midair. Within seconds, a shimmering blue barrier enveloped Starpoint fleet-grade defense tech that shimmered like glass under fire. The Voidus blast hit and vanished. Inside the colony, people erupted into cheers. Shield indicators jumped from 5% to 100%. Hope returned like oxygen. On the Dominance, Krell stared in horror. Half his fleet was disabled, the other half trapped. And then came the final blow. One last hyperspace rupture erupted, and Thunderchild emerged. A ship so massive it dwarfed even Krell's flagship. Its hull gleamed like a sword in starlight. Its weapon systems lit up like a vengeful god. "General Krell," Wells said, voice cold as ice, "may I introduce Earth's flagship? You might want to reconsider your position." Silence. Tense. Final. Then Krell lowered his head. "Open a channel," he whispered. "We will withdraw." The war was over before it ever began. But the message had been sent loud and clear. Earth protects its own. 3 days later, the council chamber on Nebulon 5 felt like a pressure cooker. 12 alien representatives sat in a sweeping half-circle, each adorned in the ceremonial garb of their species. Every seat was occupied. No one dared miss this session. News of the Starpoint incident had already rippled across the galaxy like a solar flare. The Voidist Alliance had been publicly humiliated. The Seventh Fleet's intervention was being hailed as unprecedented. And now Ambassador Elena Torres stood trial before the entire interstellar community. She stood alone at the center of the chamber. No guards, no chains, but the weight of judgment pressed harder than iron. Director Lom Telek, administrator of Nebulon 5, sat rigid behind his console. His voice echoed through the domed chamber like dry wind. "Ambassador Torres," he began, "you are accused of violating station neutrality protocols by initiating an unauthorized quantum transmission to Earth Command. Do you acknowledge this act?" Elena didn't blink. "I do." Gasps murmured through the chamber. Commander Draz, the Voidist representative, rose like a coiled serpent. His armored form gleamed under the council lights. His 4 eyes narrowed. "She has confessed to breaking galactic law," he hissed. "This alone is grounds for removal from her post and permanent banishment from diplomatic service." Lom nodded solemnly. "Ambassador, do you offer any defense?" Elena stepped forward. "Yes. I received a verified distress signal from a human colony, one under direct attack by Voidist forces. I used the quantum communicator to alert Earth Command, because there was no time to file formal reports while children were dying. Draz snapped the colony was not under Commonwealth protection. It was independent. This interference was an act of war. No, Elena said calmly. The attack was. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The silence that followed gave her words weight. Draz lunged a step forward. You lie, the territory was. The chamber doors slid open with a thunderous hiss. Everyone turned. Admiral Marcus Wells entered in full Earth Navy dress uniform, midnight black with golden insignia. The chest of his coat bore the weight of a dozen service medals, but it was the man himself that drew all eyes, tall, scarred, and emanating command like gravity. Behind him, 2 Earth Marines followed with a secure data case. Lom stood in surprise. Admiral Wells, we were not informed. I bring evidence relevant to these proceedings, Wells said. I request permission to speak. Lom hesitated, then nodded. Granted. Wells stepped to the center beside Elena. She gave him a glance, half surprise, half something deeper. He returned it with a nod of quiet solidarity. From the data case, his officers produced a palm-sized device. Lom tapped it with a translucent finger. A hologram burst to life above the chamber floor. Footage from Starpoint played. Voidus ships opening fire. Civilian transmissions. The colony's shield status. Children being ushered into bunkers. EMP devices disabling Voidus ships without casualties. And then Thunderchild emerging from hyperspace like a god of war. The chamber was silent, but for the audio of desperate cries and battlefield orders. Many of the delegates looked visibly shaken. This, Wells said, voice hard as armor, is what the Voidist Alliance calls territorial enforcement. A lie. He looked directly at Draz. The colony had legal claim to that land. They had resided there 10 years without incident. You offered no warning, no communication. You came to conquer. We came to protect. Draz's tone cracked. You violated interstellar law. Wells didn't flinch to save 3,000 lives. And if that law allows their deaths, Elena added sharply, stepping forward, then maybe the law is the problem. Draz turned to Lom, desperate. This is emotional manipulation. We are warriors of principle. Earth sent warships. They escalated. No, Lom said quietly. All heads turned to him. The recordings speak for themselves. The Council has seen unprovoked aggression. It cannot be denied. There was a pause. Then one by one other delegates activated their vote lights, small pulses of color that glowed green for approval, red for denial. 1 green, 2, 3, 4, all 12. Lom stood. The Council finds that while Ambassador Torres did technically violate station protocol, her actions were justified by the emergency. All charges are dropped. Elena felt the breath leave her chest, but Lom wasn't finished. Furthermore, he said, looking squarely at Draz, the Voidist Alliance is condemned for its actions. Reparations will be paid to Starpoint Colony. All Voidist forces are to withdraw from the neutral zone immediately. Draz let out a guttural snarl and stormed from the chamber. No one stopped him. The hearing was over. But the shift in the galaxy had just begun. Afterward, in a quiet corridor outside the council chamber, Elena leaned on the railing overlooking the central garden dome. Above her, transparent panels showed the orbiting silhouette of Thunderchild and the other human ships still holding protective formation. Footsteps approached. She didn't turn. You didn't have to come, Admiral. Wells stood beside her, arms folded. You saved that colony, Elena. I just showed up with some ships. She smiled. You risked war. So did you. They stood in silence for a moment, 2 humans among stars that once wanted nothing to do with them. Why did you really come? She asked. He looked up at Thunderchild. 6 years ago, my sister was killed in a pirate raid. No help came in time. I made a promise, never again. Elena's breath caught. My parents were on a freighter. Same story. Wells turned to her slowly. Different paths. Same goal, she finished. He smiled genuinely this time. Together they walked toward the observation deck. Below them, alien diplomats and staff paused to watch. Some nodded with respect. Above Earth's fleets hovered not as conquerors but as guardians. The stars had changed their opinion of humanity, not because humans were strong, but because they chose to be kind even when the rules said not to be. Nebulon 5 had never seen this much attention. The station, once a quiet diplomatic outpost on the fringe of the galaxy, was now the epicenter of interstellar reform. New ships arrived daily, reporters, delegates, military escorts. The echo of Starpoint's survival had become a thunderclap across every major system. And at the center of it all stood Earth. In the Grand Council Hall, the air shimmered with heat from too many lights and too many agendas. Holographic flags of 12 species floated above the platform, each flickering with gentle pride. But the 13th banner, Earth's, now flew directly in the center. This wasn't by accident. Admiral Wells sat at the head of Earth's delegation, flanked by senior diplomats, command staff, and by special request Ambassador Elena Torres. Her reinstatement was not just symbolic, it was a declaration. "We aren't just guests in this galaxy anymore," she'd said the night before. "We're stakeholders." And the galaxy was listening. Council Chair Lom opened the session, his telic voice echoing with ceremonial weight. "We convene to discuss proposed amendments to the Interstellar Protection Treaty prompted by the events surrounding the attack on Starpoint Colony." A murmur ran through the chamber. Everyone knew what this meant. For centuries, neutrality and jurisdiction had been shields of bureaucracy. What Earth proposed now would tear that fabric wide open. Admiral Wells stood. "We submit a new clause," he said, placing a data pad onto the central console. Article 31. Any human colony, regardless of political affiliation, is henceforth considered under Earth's protection. Another ripple of voices. A Sylvani diplomat hissed, "That's unprecedented. You would claim authority over non-member settlements." Wells nodded once. "We will not enforce law. We will not collect taxes. We will not govern. But if one of our own is attacked, we will come." "You're creating a galactic exception," a Makari ambassador snapped. "You're rewriting the rules to suit your species." Wells raised an eyebrow. "The rules allowed 3,000 civilians to nearly die while everyone debated whose jurisdiction they belonged to. Maybe it's time those rules got rewritten." Torres stepped forward. "This clause does not demand special status. It declares responsibility. We are not claiming superiority. We are claiming our family." Lom blinked his wide silver eyes. "You would risk war over unregistered colonies. If someone attacks a human, they won't have to wonder if we'll come," Wells said. "Only how fast." Silence. The representatives stared, each calculating. Some saw chaos. Some saw power plays. But most saw a new kind of order. An order where protection wasn't a matter of politics, it was a matter of principle. Finally, Lom leaned forward. "This council has spent decades trying to separate compassion from diplomacy. Perhaps that was short-sighted." He tapped the voting orb. The colors lit one by one. Green, green, green. 12 out of 12. The clause passed. Earth's proposal was now law. Outside the council chamber, the hallways pulsed with reporters and messengers racing to send updates across the stars. The news reached Proxima Station in minutes. Earth's moon within the hour. And before nightfall, human settlements from Saturn's icy moons to the fireglass domes on Tau Ceti celebrated as if they'd just survived Judgment Day. At Starpoint, people wept, not out of fear, but relief. They weren't forgotten anymore. In the observation dome, Elena stood with Admiral Wells watching the fleets orbit Nebulon 5 in perfect formation. Thunderchild remained at the center, her presence a steady reminder. "You realize," she said, "you just turned Earth into the galaxy's unofficial emergency service." Wells grunted. "Better that than funeral director." She laughed softly. He turned to her. You did this. You made the call no one else would. We just followed the beacon. You answered the call, she said, even when the rules told you not to. He nodded. Rules change. That's what humans do best. From the corner of the deck, Trill floated up, suit gleaming with fresh polish. Elena, he said, I just received an invitation. The Aquarian Homeworld Council wants you to speak about emergency diplomacy. Elena blinked. Really? They're calling it the Torres Doctrine. She snorted. Sounds a little dramatic. Not to them, Trill said. They don't change doctrines often, but they do when they see one work. Wells grinned. You're becoming dangerous ambassador. She smiled back. Good. The galaxy's been dangerous for a long time. It's about time we had someone in the room who understood that and gave a damn. They turned back to the stars. Behind them, 1,000 policies were being rewritten. Before them, a galaxy waited, waiting to see if Earth would falter or rise. But tonight, one thing was already clear. The age of isolation was over. And from here on out, every cry for help in the dark might just get an answer. From the deathworlders. Far beyond the edges of Commonwealth space, past star charts, past known jump lanes, past even the Voidist Alliance's long fingers, something watched. In the shadows of an ancient starfield where the suns no longer burned and time seemed paused, a massive station floated like a black pearl. To most of the galaxy, this place did not exist. To those who knew better, it was called the Spire. Within its halls, a being stirred. Not flesh, not metal, something older, something architected. It shifted across translucent fibers of thought, connecting to deep interstellar listening arrays that had been monitoring quantum pulse activity for millennia. And now one such pulse had broken every predictive model it possessed. Subject humanity, signal quantum level emergency transmission, response time illogical, military mobilization immediate, outcome galactic intervention. The being pulsed an internal command. Playback and Nebulon 5 incident, Starpoint. Scenes unfolded in real-time. Ambassador Torres breaking protocol. 7th Fleet's jump into Cygnus corridor. EMP strikes, shield deployments. Thunderchild emerging like a myth. The Council's vote, the new law, the cheering, the humans standing unbroken. Deviation, deviation, deviation. One by one, the Spire's other occupants, 13 watchers, emerged from deep thought sleep. They had many forms. One was smoke in a suit of glass. One resembled a tree made of stars. Another pulsed with data like a living quantum computer. But they all shared one thing. They had been here long before the first race split an atom, before the first empire rose, before the precursors burned their own maps. They had seen civilizations rise and fall, and they had categorized humans. Deathworlders, emotional, violent, innovative, fractured, useful, but containable. Until now, they moved, as one watcher said. They rewrote policy by action, not petition, said another. They came, not for conquest, but for kin. That word hung in the vast silence of the Spire. One watcher flicked a branch of light through the recordings again. They disabled ships without destroying them, protected life even as they overwhelmed military targets. Strategic mercy. That is not how deathworlders behave, hissed the one called Varn. They are evolving, whispered another, faster than projections. The Spire pulsed. Predictions reshuffled. Models collapsed. One after another, the simulations began to fail. Galaxies bending not by force, but by influence. This is not natural acceleration, said the Arbiter class watcher. Something has catalyzed their change. Something or someone. All minds turned to Earth, to the diplomats who defied orders, to the admirals who risked war, to a species that was never meant to unify this fast, not without the old empires guiding them. A new command emerged. Rerun projection path humanity ascendant. The result was unacceptable. By current trajectory, humans would control or influence over 38% of stabilized galactic trade in 2 centuries. Their doctrine of protection would spread faster than law. Other species, especially fringe ones, would flock to their ideology. The Dominion would crumble. The Voidist would fracture. Even the Watcher's own influence in outer rim manipulation would begin to erode. Too early, one said. Too dangerous. We must slow them, another agreed. Apply pressure. Delay their spread. Break unity. But the spire did not speak with only fear. One watcher, smaller than the others, wearing a skin of refracted starlight, spoke softly. Or we could observe. Observe, Varn growled. They're destabilizing a 1,000-year model. They are doing what no species has done, the small one said. Spreading power without empire, uniting without conquest, shielding without taxation. That has never existed. The chamber pulsed with debate. And at the center, the signal still looped, Elena's voice pleading for help. The Defiance bridge flaring to life. A child looking up at the sky and whispering, "They came." The starlit watcher floated higher. Perhaps it is not the galaxy that shapes humanity, it said. Perhaps it is humanity that will reshape the galaxy. The others fell silent. At last, the spire issued one collective directive. Maintain observation. Initiate interference Tier 2 if expansion surpasses threshold path 4. And beneath that, another directive undocumented, unspoken. A simple phrase. Prepare contact. For better or worse, the watchers would soon step from the dark. Because the age of distant observation had ended. And Earth was no longer just a subject. It was becoming a player. 4 weeks after the Battle of Starpoint, Earth stopped asking for permission. The Commonwealth had barely finished drafting its new charter when the 7th Fleet jumped again, this time to New Delphi, an isolated human settlement orbiting a volcanic exoplanet. They didn't wait for distress signals. They came after listening posts picked up strange energy fluctuations. A Voidist patrol was already orbiting nearby, testing defense grids. When Admiral Wells arrived, no shots were fired, because they didn't have to. The Defiant appeared with Thunderchild at its flank, and within minutes the Voidist ships withdrew silently. No words, just surrender by absence. In the days that followed, Earth Navy ships fanned out across dozens of fringe systems. Some were human colonies who had never even seen a starship from their homeworld. Others were alien settlements forgotten by their own empires. And every time the result was the same. They came, they stabilized, they left no occupation. No taxes, no flag raising, just shields, supplies, medics, and if needed, guns. The galaxy didn't know what to call this new policy. Some called it shadow guarding. Others whispered the Death World Doctrine. The humans had a name for it too. They called it doing the right damn thing. In her office aboard Thunderchild Ambassador, Elena Torres read the daily dispatches, sipping a lukewarm mug of recycled tea. Across her desk, Trill floated in his new pressure suit, sleeker, more mobile, with a hollow scarf of Aquarian diplomatic threads coiled behind his head. "You're on at the Galactic Council in 8 minutes, Trill said. Elena groaned. "Do I have to?" "Yes." "Can I lie?" "No." "Can I lie really well?" "Also no." She sighed, "Then let's do it." As they walked the corridor, passing Earth Marines, alien envoys, and civilian technicians all working side by side, Trill asked the question that had hung between them since Nebulon 5. "Do you think we're going too far?" Elena didn't answer right away. Finally, she said, "Do you know what the Dominion said when we offered to help rebuild their agricultural satellite last week?" Trill shook his head. "They said, why would deathworlders fix something they didn't break?" Trill blinked, and I said, "Because we remember what it's like to be broken and left alone." They didn't speak after that, because there was nothing more to say. At the Galactic Council Assembly, 1,000 eyes turned to the human delegation as Elena stepped to the center of the forum. She wore no medals, no armor, just the black and blue dress uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps and the unmistakable fire of conviction behind her gaze. Lom, still chairing, spoke first. Ambassador Torres, several member worlds have expressed concern that Earth is deploying military resources in systems outside its jurisdiction without formal requests or coordination. She nodded. We are. A low gasp spread. Some view this as a threat, another delegate said. Unchecked military projection often precedes empire. We don't want an empire, Elena replied flatly. We just don't want anyone else to be Starpoint. She tapped her wrist console and dozens of holograms filled the air images of colonies Earth had aided, flood zones, famine zones, systems under silent blockade. In each one, Earth didn't stay. They simply helped, then left. We didn't come with flags. We didn't build statues. We didn't rename your cities. She looked around the chamber, her voice iron. We came when you needed us, and then we went home. An Avexian delegate, a race of crystalline logic beings, clicked through a series of projected thought symbols. Their translator spoke. But what if others begin calling for your aid unilaterally? What if you destabilize the current balance? Elena shrugged. Then maybe the balance needs destabilizing. More murmurs. Lom's expression remained unreadable. And if the watchers noticed, that silenced the room. Everyone had heard whispers, the spire, the quiet interference, the ancient unseen hands that sometimes nudge civilizations off cliffs or push them toward war. No proof, but everyone believed. Elena's voice didn't waver. If they're watching, they've already seen who we are. And what if they don't like what they see? She folded her arms. Then they'll find out the hard way. Earth doesn't kneel. A heavy pause. Then Lom, for the first time in living memory, smiled. Noted. Back aboard Thunderchild, Admiral Wells watched the stars shift from the command deck. The AI interface flickered beside him. New report from the Ordedge colony, Admiral, the voice said. Unregistered ships were seen approaching. No flag, no ID, moving in a cloak pattern similar to Voida's stealth tech. Response. Colonial admin requested immediate assistance. We're the only fleet within range. Wells didn't hesitate. Plot jump. Battle ready. Acknowledged. Hyperspace vector locked. Commander Pike joined him as the deck buzzed with activity. Another one? Wells nodded. And another after that, until they stopped needing us. Pike smirked. You ever think we'll stop? Wells looked out the viewport. No, he said. And that's the point. The stars twisted, reality bent, and Earth's fury jumped again. Not for power, but because someone called. And that's what deathworlders do best. They answer. It started with a message, not a threat, not a declaration, not even a demand. Just a single pulse through hyperspace, encoded in a language no living species had used in over 1 million years. But Earth's linguistics AI cracked it in minutes, because humanity had a habit of figuring out things they weren't supposed to. On the bridge of the Defiant, Admiral Wells read the translation aloud. To the Deathworlders you claim to protect, come prove it, coordinates attached. No name, no explanation, just a cold invitation. Commander Pike frowned. Trap. Absolutely, Wells replied. Are we going? Of course. Because Deathworlders don't ignore dares. The coordinates led to an uncharted system deep in the galactic shadows, no planets. Just a brown dwarf star spinning like a dying ember. And one station, not built, grown. It pulsed with ancient architecture, all biometal curves and gravity-defying towers. Energy signatures unreadable. Composition unknown. As the Defiant dropped out of hyperspace, scanners screamed in confusion. Nothing made sense. No weapons detected, no threats logged. Just a single hangar open, lit from within. Waiting. Admiral Wells stood at the airlock with the Ambassador Elena Torres beside him, both suited in light armor. Behind them, 4 Marines. Trill floated at the rear looking like a very nervous jellyfish in a sleek water suit. "You sure about this?" Elena asked. "No," Wells said. "Me neither." The hatch opened, and the moment they stepped inside the station, the galaxy changed. It looked like a cathedral built by time itself. Towers of shifting light, walls that bent inward and outward at once. Sounds of wind, but there was no air. Lights without source, and in the center, a chamber. They entered it like trespassers in a god's living room, and there waiting were the watchers. Not 13, not gathered, just one. A being wrapped in shimmering filaments of color, humanoid in outline, but too tall, too fluid, too ancient. Its voice came not through air, but through thought. "I am Observer 9. This trial is yours." Wells's jaw clenched. "Trial. You speak of protection. Let us test the cost." The room changed instantly. No warning. Suddenly they were standing on a simulated battlefield. Bodies everywhere, human and alien alike. Fires burned in broken colonies. The cries of the wounded echoed through the air. Elena stumbled. "What is this?" "This is a truth yet to come. One version, one possibility." In front of them appeared 2 holographic colonies. One human, one alien. Both under attack by unknown forces. Observer 9's voice echoed again. "You can save only one." Pike's voice crackled over comms from the ship. "Admiral, we see it too. This is being broadcast to our crew. To everyone." Observer 9 made sure the entire human fleet was watching. A choice, a no-win scenario. Wells's mind raced. What if we refuse the question? Then both fall. The room darkened. You may protect many, but we ask, when it truly matters, who matters more? Trill whispered, "This isn't just a trap, it's philosophy warfare." Elena's fist clenched. "They're trying to break our unity, our ideals." Exactly. This wasn't about firepower. It was about forcing humanity to become like every other empire that came before, choosing one life over another. Drawing lines. Becoming what they swore they wouldn't. Wells didn't speak. He just stepped forward. Both colonies upload data. Observer 9 pulsed. "Only one." "Upload both," he repeated. The colonies blinked into full view: supply stats, civilian numbers, defense status. Wells turned to his comms mic. "Bridge, this is Wells. Activate the Hydra protocol." Pike's voice replied immediately. "Sir, that's untested." "Do it." Moments later, the Defiance AI launched 2 drone-controlled hyperspace tugs, one aimed at each colony. Prototype units, not perfect, not enough on their own, but enough to delay. Enough to buy time. Then Wells turned to Observer 9. "I refuse your scenario. You cannot defy the trial." Wells took a step closer, eyes locked. "We don't leave people behind, any people. You say we can't protect everyone, maybe, but we'll die trying before we ever choose who lives." Elena stood beside him. "We are not your old civilizations. We are not your failed experiments. You're not testing us. You're showing us how afraid you are." That hit something. The lights dimmed. The wind stopped. Observer 9 blinked and vanished. The room returned to the station interior. The watcher was gone. In its place, a phrase etched into the wall, glowing faintly. "You have passed, for now." Back aboard the Defiant, the bridge exploded with noise. Cheers, tears. One Marine just sat down and whispered, "Holy shit." Pike grinned. "I think we scared a god." Wells didn't smile. He just stared out the viewport at the stars beyond. "They weren't just watching," he said. "They were hoping we'd fail." Elena joined him. "And now they know if they want us to fall." She looked out beside him. "They better bring more than questions." Because Earth had made its choice. Not between colonies, but between who they used to be and who they refused to become. The signal came 18 days after the trial. It wasn't human. It wasn't voidist. It wasn't from the Watchers. It was older. Picked up by a listening array orbiting Saturn, it began as simple pulses, then mathematical harmonics, then images. One image repeated a child. Not just any child, a human child. And not just any human. The child Elena had rescued with her own arms during the evacuation of Starpoint. Her name was Leah Wynn, age 7, brown hair, sharp eyes, born under the domed skylight of Starpoint's southern habitat. No implants, no tech. But somehow, she was appearing in a message being broadcast from over 100,000 light years away. Earth command froze. The message repeated again and again. The girl's face, a binary star behind her, and a phrase etched across the signal in ancient glyphs. It took AI a day to translate it. She sings in frequencies you do not yet hear. We heard her, we answered. She is the first. Elena sat in the observation room aboard Thunderchild watching the girl sleep. Leah lay curled beneath a soft blanket, a small toy ship clutched in her arms. Monitors tracked everything. Brainwaves, EM field pulses, molecular activity. But what scared the scientists most wasn't what they saw, it was what they didn't understand. Dr. Mayers entered face pale. Ambassador, this child's neural patterns aren't just advanced. They're broadcasting. Broadcasting, not to us, to somewhere else. Elena stood. She's talking back to them. The doctor nodded. We think Leah subconsciously responded to the spire. Her panic, her empathy, it echoed through space like a flare. Trill floated into the room glowing softly. Not a weapon, not a soldier, a resonance. Something no AI, no Warfleet, no Watcher predicted. She's not a threat, Elena said. No, Trill replied. She's a beginning. At Earth Council HQ, the debate exploded. Some wanted Leah hidden. Others wanted her studied. Some even feared her. Admiral Wells sat silently at the back of the council room as politicians, generals, scientists, and panic-obsessed media figures threw arguments like daggers. She could attract more of them, whatever they are. She could be a target. She could be a key. Finally, Elena stepped to the center of the room. She didn't speak loudly. She didn't yell. But everyone listened. She's a child, she said. One we almost let die. One who cried out not with weapons, but with something inside her, and the universe answered. Not with fire, but with attention. And now we're afraid because we don't control it, because it doesn't follow our rules. But maybe that's the point. She looked around slowly. Maybe this is what comes next, after the wars, after the diplomacy, after the fleets. She placed her hand over her heart. The reason, silence. Then Wells stood. All fleets, defensive posture only. The child is not a threat. And the matter was closed. Because Earth had chosen again. To protect not just its borders, but its future. Months passed. Leah Wynn began to speak less in words and more in tones. She would hum near the viewports and stars would flicker differently. She would place her hands on data consoles and diagnostic errors would vanish. And one day she simply said, "They're coming." Elena crouched down beside her. "Who's coming?" "Sweetheart, the ones who never wanted to hurt anyone. But they were always alone." "Alien," Leah nodded slowly. "They're scared of you, but they're more scared to keep hiding." And then she smiled. "They said you passed." Elena looked up through the viewport at the star-filled black. They, who? But Leah had already gone back to sleep. It happened 2 weeks later. The stars pulsed in a spiral across 100 systems. Jump points opened in perfect unison. But no warfleets came. No weapons. No threats. Only ships organic, glowing, curved like music frozen in glass. Species never seen before. Civilizations long thought extinct. And they came with open hands. To learn, to speak, to be part of whatever humanity had just started. Wells stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching one of the alien ships slowly approach Earth orbit. He turned to Elena. You realize we didn't win a war. She nodded. We passed a test. Not a trial of fire, Wells said. A trial of soul. And the galaxy saw, not just what humans could destroy, but what they would refuse to destroy no matter the cost. At the center of it all, Leah stood in a field on Earth, barefoot, surrounded by newly arrived children from alien worlds. They were laughing, playing, teaching each other new words, sharing stories without translation. She raised her hand toward the sky, and high above, Thunderchild blinked its running lights in silent salute. Below, the child smiled, and something vast and ancient smiled back. Because in the end, deathworlders weren't feared anymore. They were followed. And the galaxy would never be the same. The end.